Sign this and our wedding stays women only, my fiancée said, sliding a crisp folder across my kitchen island like she was handing me a parking ticket. It is how my family does it. It is not up for debate. The folder smelled like toner and lavender. Somewhere outside, a siren wailed down 3rd Street and the kettle clicked off behind me. That was the night I realized the wedding she wanted did not include the people I loved. Specifically, it did not include any men except me. And if I refused, she said we could still marry, but separately. Spoiler, the ending is not what she expected. And I am telling you this as the man who chose himself. I am male, 30 years old. My fiancée, female, 28 years old. We live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where lake wind slaps your cheeks awake and the coffee tastes a little like winter. We met at a street fair over fried cheese curds and bluegrass. 3 years later, she proposed with a paper crane ring she folded herself. I said yes because I believed we were building the same house. I learned later that she had blueprints I had never seen. Her family's tradition, as she explained it over ginger tea, goes like this. The wedding ceremony and reception are attended by the groom and only women from both families. Mothers, sisters, aunties, grandmothers, co-workers, neighbors who have ever baked a casserole. No men. 2 weeks later, the men hold a smaller, secondary party where my wife is the only woman allowed. It started generations ago when the only son in my great-great-grandmother's village was lost at sea, she said, twirling a teaspoon. The women learned to celebrate each other without men present. She told it like a bedtime story. I heard a lock clicking. It will be intimate and supportive, she said. I thought about my father's hand on my shoulder, my best friend Malik trying to hide tears, my nephew in a tiny bow tie. I told her I could not marry without them. She told me I was being dramatic. Who would you side with here? I asked her. And I guess I am asking you too. By morning, her mother and her aunt were on my porch with a box of Kolachovsky and a 2-page understanding. The pastries were dusted with enough powdered sugar to fog the air. They declined to remove their boots. Irina, my fiancé's mother, has a voice that can stop traffic. You are our groom, she said, as if it were a verdict. The women will carry you through the day. Men will celebrate later in peace. Her aunt, Basia, nodded like a bobblehead in a floral scarf. Traditions protect marriages, Basia said. Marriages die when men take up too much space. I tried humor. My dad's 5'8" on a good day and terrified of public speaking. He will take up negative space. They did not laugh. Irina set the Kolachovsky between us like an offering. You will sign, she said, pressing a pen into my palm. And promise that finances will align with our matriarchal clarity, primary assets titled to the wife, discretionary spending approved by the mother and elder aunts for the first year. My mouth tasted like copper and sugar. Since when is that part of the wedding? I asked. Since always, Irina said. My sister Jenna called while they were still in my living room. She is 32 years old, a high school counselor who can smell nonsense from a hallway away. I told her because something in me wanted witnesses. Jenna said, as softly as a slap, so your entire side of the family's men are barred from your wedding? And they want control of your budget, too. Irina smiled like a cat with the last bird feather. Guidance, she corrected, for a harmonious start. Jenna inhaled sharply. Would you take your partner's side over your family's? She asked me later, when the women left a dusting of sugar and a threat. I have never hated a question for being fair. I spent the afternoon at Lakefront Brewery pretending to read a menu while people ordered pretzels the size of steering wheels. Malik slid onto the stool next to me. He is 30 years old, my friend since we were 10, and the only person who would tell me I look tired without offering me vitamins. I told him the women-only rule. He blinked. "So your mom can go," he said, "but your dad cannot? Your sister can go, but I cannot?" I nodded. "And 2 weeks later, there's a guy party with your wife as the only woman, so she can, what, cut a cake and report back?" The bartender wiped a ring of beer foam off the wood. Malik shook his head. "Man, that feels like being told, 'Here's your seat at the kid table for life.'" He asked the question I had been avoiding. What else is in the fine print? I showed him the folder Irina had given me. He read with his eyebrows climbing. "Clause 4, he said, Household Decision Protocol, first year mediated by the Elder Women Council." He looked up. Elder? Women? Council? He drummed his fingers. He flipped another page. Clause 7. Fertility blessing supervised by Aunt Beja within 10 days of the ceremony. He stopped. Is that an invasive thing? I thought of Beja's hands. My stomach turned over. Ruth, my coworker, had been listening from 2 stools away because Milwaukee. She leaned in with the casual boldness of someone who grew up with 7 siblings. "My cousin married into something like this," she said. "It started with just the wedding and turned into just the first birthday and then just Christmas morning. The men were always later, and later never came." She pushed a napkin toward me. "Write down the 3 non-negotiables you want at your wedding. If her list cancels yours out, that is not compromise. That is conversion." She tapped the pen. "And ask yourself, is standing up for yourself always the right move?" she asked without blinking. "Sometimes," she added, "tradition is a costume for control." That line hit me like cold lake wind. I wrote, "My dad at my side. Malik toasting me. A dance with my mom while the DJ plays her favorite Anita Baker song." Malik slapped the bar. "Those are basic human wedding things," he said, "not fringe demands." 2 nights later, I agreed to dinner at her mother's house because hope makes fools of the best of us. The house smelled like dill and bleach. The table was laid with pierogi and borscht and a roast chicken that glistened under the dining room light like a promise. Irina sat at the head. My fiancée wore a pale sweater and the expression she uses when she thinks I am close to understanding her. Beja arrived late carrying a wicker basket. Inside, there were 3 white candles, a string of red thread, and a small laminated card labeled Purity Oath. My fork paused in midair. "Beja will conduct the blessing quietly after dessert," Irina said. Beja's smile hinted at ceremony. She rubbed her thumb over the card like it would purr. My fiancée squeezed my knee under the table. "It is quaint," she whispered, "like taking photos in front of a barn." I pictured a barn door slamming. I put down my fork. "No," I said, so softly the word felt private. The conversation froze. Even the clock on the wall seemed to reconsider its ticking. Her mother sighed in that disappointed way that inspires obedience. "You cannot cherry-pick culture," she said. "Either you respect our way or you do not." I asked a stupid question because sometimes you need to hear a thing said aloud. "If we have a daughter, will you expect her to keep the women-only rule at her wedding?" Beja reached for the red thread. "Of course," she said. "It is protection." My fiancé's jaw tightened. "This is embarrassing," she murmured, "not about the ritual, but about my resistance." "Should I be ashamed for breaking tradition?" I asked, and for a second I thought she would meet me there, on the ledge of doubt. She did not. "Sign the understanding," Irina said, pushing the folder back into the room like a tide. The roast chicken continued to shine as if none of this were happening. Outside, a car door slammed. Somewhere, a dog barked. It felt like the world tried to make noise for me because my voice was failing. The next morning, my mother, Gloria, came over with a grocery bag filled with lemons and stubborn optimism. She is 58 years old, small and principled, and the kind of person who labels leftovers with dates like she is the archivist of our family's meals. She squeezed lemon into her tea and listened until her shoulders lifted to her ears. "Your father will pretend he is fine," she said, "but he will perform stoicism at home and then cry in the garage." She laughed without joy. "Your father has a stool in the garage for prying. It is very masculine." She pressed my hand. "We want to show up for you. In person, not in a second-rate after-party." She told me a story I had never heard. On her wedding day, her own mother's sisters tried to dictate the guest list, seating chart, even the dessert. "We did compromise," she said, "and it ate at me for years." Then she said the line that felt like marching orders: "Do not trade your voice for a vow." I texted my fiancée that we needed to talk without her mother present. She replied with a location pin: a quiet coffee shop on Kinnickinnick Avenue that smelled like cedar and espresso. She arrived with a neat bun and a clean agenda. I told her the blessing and the counsel and the asset clauses were beyond what I could stomach. "Strip those out," I said, "and we can talk about honoring your family in ways that honor me too." She stared at the latte foam like it might write a better answer. "You are asking me to betray the women who raised me," she said. "They will see that as betrayal." I told her love is not a team sport. She said, "In my family, it is a team sport, with referees. The referees are old women with incredible memories." Then she said the thing that cracked the mug. "I did not tell you earlier because I knew you would make a fuss." I laughed once, the kind of sound that feels like swallowing a shard. "That is not a reason," I said. "That is a confession." She folded her hands, finally small. "Do you think I'll regret this later?" she asked. I realized she meant staying with me if I did not give in. I realized I had been asking the wrong question all along. "Is loyalty to your family more important than respect for your husband?" I asked. She did not answer. The cedar air suddenly smelled like smoke. The twist did not arrive with fireworks. It arrived on my porch, tucked into an envelope addressed in my fiancé's handwriting. I had not yet opened it when Malik texted me a photo. It was of a private Facebook group I had never heard of, Salt Wives of the North Shore. He had been added by mistake through a mutual acquaintance, the barista with the Anita Baker playlist, and promptly removed, but not before he screenshotted a post from Irina. "We are proud to welcome a new groom into our tradition. He has signed our understanding and will honor our ceremony. Men-only after-party details forthcoming." The post was 4 days old. It had 32 likes and 10 comments with clapping hands. I sat on the stoop with the envelope in my lap and thought about how lies sometimes arrive early and wait for you to catch up. Inside the envelope, there was a printed invitation mock-up for our wedding, a celebration of women and the honored groom. At the bottom, in tiny letters, "By attending, you agree to respect the privacy of our rituals." My name looked foreign next to hers. I called her. She answered on the second ring. "We sent designs to the printer," she said without hello. "Production takes weeks." I stared at the hydrangeas in the planter by my stairs, little fists of blue. "You told people I signed," I said. "You told strangers I agreed to the counsel and the blessing." She exhaled like she had been holding her breath since the beginning of time. "It is easier to ask you to live up to a decision than to get you to make one," she said. "People are counting on this." "People," I repeated. "What about me?" Her silence stretched until it felt like a dare. "Listen," she said finally. "If the men need attention, they will get their party. You will get your moment. My mother will make sure of it." That was the moment the polite posture left me. "You keep saying your mother," I said. "I have not heard my name in your plans for a while." "I am trying to protect us," she insisted. "You are protecting a system," I said, voice steady. "And I am the offering." She hung up. I texted Jenna, Malik, and Ruth. Meet me at my parents' place tonight. I wanted witnesses again, but this time for the opposite of surrender. Is walking away from family weakness or strength? I typed into my notes app, feeling the weight of the answer. The kettle clicked off again. I let it cool without pouring. My parents set paper plates on the table like we were planning a picnic, not a break. Jenna brought bakery cannolis and an emergency playlist. Malik brought a 6-pack of root beer and a speech he asked me not to interrupt. Ruth walked in with a yellow legal pad titled Sanity Plan. We sat around the dining table that wobbles if you lean too hard on the south side. The house smelled like marinara and clean laundry. My father, 60 years old, quiet, took my hand and squeezed. He did not cry yet. He only looked like a man who had been saving tears for a good reason. I need to call it off, I said, and the words fell heavy but right. No one argued. Not one person said, "Give it time." Malik leaned forward. "People reveal themselves," he said. "Believe them." Ruth flipped her legal pad to show a checklist. Cancel deposits that had not been made, return the crane ring, draft a message that honored my truth without torching the city. Jenna opened her laptop to help me write. My mom brought out a plate of cut mango and pretzels because how else do you brace for an earthquake? We drafted, "I am no longer moving forward with the wedding. I love you. I cannot accept a ceremony that excludes half my family and gives control of our marriage to people who are not in it. I will not participate in rituals that violate my boundaries. This is not about hating your family. It is about loving myself to say no." "Add something for her directly," Jenna said. I typed, "If you ever want a partnership where both families stand together, call me. If not, I wish you good." Malik read it aloud, and the words sounded like a porch light flicking off and another one flicking on. Before I sent it, I asked the room, "Is family loyalty more important than fairness?" No one answered immediately. We just listened to the old clock tick like it had always approved of hard choices. I hit send. The house felt larger, and I felt smaller in a way that was relief. My father finally sat on his crying stool in the garage and then came back with eyes clear. He said, "Proud of you." It took me 30 years to realize pride can be made of water. The fallout arrived like lake-effect snow, sudden, thick, hard to see through. My fiancé sent a paragraph that began with, "You embarrassed me," and ended with, "You will regret this." I did not reply. Arena called my mother to say I had humiliated their line. My mother said, "He is a person, not a tradition." Basha texted Malik, "How? We will never know," to inform him he was barred from the men's after-party he would never attend. He responded with a meme of a cat knocking a glass off a table. Ruth's legal pad gained 2 check marks and a new header, Aftercare. She assigned each of my friends a job. Malik took me to shoot hoops on a cracked court behind the middle school where we learned dodgeball and diplomacy. Jenna drove me to return the crane ring. I left it with a note, "May it fold into something that holds you without breaking me." The jeweler gave us a peppermint each. It tasted like starting over. Her family posted a picture on their group page of a long table set for a women-only engagement dinner, without a groom. The caption read, "We celebrate our daughters with or without men." I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. Ruth put her hand over my phone. "That is not the story," she said. "This is your story. You set a boundary and upheld it when it became expensive." She looked me in the eye. "Am I the problem or the solution?" I asked her, because I still needed permission to choose me apparently. She said, "You are the person who refused a stacked deck." She added, like a tagline, "No is a love language." 2 days later, a cousin of my ex-fiancé called to apologize. Carefully, she told me that the fertility blessing involved more than candles and thread. It involved an elder woman's inspection. I felt sick in a new way, not just for myself, but for all the men who had been marched through a ritual no one would name aloud. It reframed every photo I had seen of their ceremonies. The groom smiling, surrounded by women. How many smiles were armor? I thought about what might have happened if I had swallowed my discomfort and signed. I wrote a sentence on a sticky note and stuck it on my bathroom mirror. Tradition without consent is just control. Next to it, I wrote one more. We teach people how to treat us by either refusing or complying. And then, because I needed closure that did not require an audience, I walked along the lakefront with a coffee and let the wind erase what it could. Weeks later, I ran into my ex-fiancée at the farmer's market by Cathedral Square. The air smelled like basil and kettle corn. She was alone, hair loose, holding a carton of strawberries. For a second, we were the people who met over fried cheese curds and promises. She looked tired, but lighter, like someone who had set down a heavy box and discovered she could stand up straight again. We stepped out of the flow of strollers and dogs. I wanted the women to love you, she said quietly. I thought if I could just get you through the door, the rest would make sense. I nodded. I wanted my dad to dance at my wedding, I said. I thought if I could just get you to the idea of us choosing each other first, the rest would follow. We looked at the strawberries like they had answers. She told me, without looking at me, that she had started questioning the blessing. My cousin refused, she said. There is a fight happening in our house now. I looked at her then, really looked, and she was not my opponent. She was a person caught between love and loyalty like a rope in a game no one wins. Would you take revenge in my place? I asked with a half smile, because humor is a bridge when anger is a wall. She laughed, the first real laugh I had heard from her in months. No, she said, but I may take responsibility. We stood there with our nearly compatible truths. I wish you good, I said, and meant it. She squeezed my arm. Thank you for saying no, she said. You do not know what you may have saved me from. She left with her strawberries. I bought a bunch of sunflowers for my mother and a bag of kettle corn for my father, and walked home in air that felt like a promise you make to yourself, steady, renewable. 2 blocks from my place, Malik texted a screenshot. The Salt Wives group had a new post. It was Irina again, furious. Modern men are weak. 10 comments, all agreeing. I almost typed something. Then I remembered Ruth's advice. Pick your fights like you pick your friends, carefully. I put my phone back in my pocket. I looked up at a sky so blue it hurt, and I thought, he did not cheat. He built a hierarchy. The memeable line popped into my head like a billboard. Another popped in behind it. Love without respect is just a story we tell ourselves. At my door, I paused. I could hear my neighbor practicing saxophone through the hallway, the notes bending like forgiving wood. I let myself in and set the sunflowers on the table. They caught the light like small suns. For the first time in months, I was not waiting for someone else's permission to live a life I recognized. And that is when I realized I was not losing a wedding. I was reclaiming a self.